Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel where we share safe real estate investment tips, talk about property law, and share credible real estate investment opportunities here in Nigeria. Basically, every video on this channel is an asset to real estate investors and property buyers. Finally, on this channel, every subscriber is family, a family of millionaire real estate investors. Welcome.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Madam Lally here. I'm so excited to be doing this today. So, if you're here with me, to say something in the comment section. How are you doing? Hope you're doing great. So, welcome to today's edition. Oh, this is September. Yes, I would say September's edition of how to secure your investment, even if a divorce happens, right? I'm also here to learn as well. So I'll quickly invite Barrister Raymond and he will just dive straight into it. So I'm also here to learn today. Barrister Raymond of Fortreal Rei Ltd. He also he's a property lawyer, not just a random lawyer, but a property lawyer. And we've done quite a number of things a whole lot of times. And I'm super excited about what he's doing in the industry. And I'm so excited that Nigeria's real estate is gradually moving to it's at an inflection point where we are gradually having more and more sensible people who can make Nigeria's real estate, who can paint it better. Because over time we have seen people, get defrauded. People have these very, very poor stories about Lagos and Nigeria's real estate. But I'm excited about people like Barrister Raymond who are redefining value in the industry, and I'm so happy to be doing this with him today because he has vast knowledge on the industry and much more important in property law. So he's the best person. You want to grab a pen and papers right now and join this conversation. So if you here.
Good afternoon, Mercy. Thank you for having me. It's another day to share value and to bless our audience, and I'm always excited whenever the opportunity is brought to my table. Knowledge is useless if it can't be delivered, if people, right? So yeah, it's always a privilege, and we're ready to shoot. All right, so the subject matter we are having is a very sensitive one, and I'm going to try to be as careful as possible. As well, it's important to say that the conversation is a very wide one. It is a very broad one, and it's also legally sensitive. By legally sensitive, I mean that there are several opinions in the field, and there are a lot of uncertainties based on the fact that our judicial system, our legal system, generally the legislature and the judiciary, have not really helped in this regard. So it ends up putting together a lot of inconsistencies, inadequacies, and all of that. But what I'm going to do for you, what I'm doing today, is to create a path, is to establish a create solution in itself that can help solve the big problem that we are having. All right. So yes, we're talking about marriage, divorce, real estate investment, and divorce. And I'd like to start by saying that there are three types of marriage, or basically three levels of marriage as recognized by our law. You'd have the marriage under custom, what we call traditional marriage. You also have marriage based on Islamic law, and you also have marriage finally based on the statute. The statutory marriage is the one that most people refer to as court marriage. Yeah, it's not actually done in court, it's done at the registry, and mostly at the local government council. It's important I say this at this point because a lot of persons have the misconception. Most persons don't even understand what a statutory marriage is or what a court marriage is, as it were. I'll use both terms interchangeably so as you understand it. Whenever I say statutory marriage, I mean what you know as court marriage. All right. It's important. Like I said, the subject matter is very broad. And one thing that you're going to realize is that our focus is going to be on statutory marriages. So first, I need to establish the fact that you if you want all I'm going to share for here to be beneficial to you, if you really have it in mind as a woman, particularly this conversation really is for women, because in all sincerity, our laws have not been favorable to women.
Amen.
It is an opinion that is backed up by realities, because from our cultural background as Africans, as a matter of fact, it's not even an African thing, because from common law is back so many years ago, and falls as far back as the, and we borrowed it from whites. And part of their laws, part of what they considered as a content of the common law, is that a man and a woman, even if they are married, are one. But that one person, the element, that one person is the man, and the woman is, in quote, not recognized. So even if you give property to a husband and a wife as a unit, one individual, as husband and wife, because the statutory marriage makes them one, right? Even the Bible says that getting married makes you a husband, a fan, people, the wife lives with, come together to become one. Now, upon becoming one, that ONE that is referred to in that context is the man who is the head. So even from common law, women are, in quotes, with respect, sidelined. They are not recognized. So it's not even an African thing, even though Africa now recognizes it and now establishes it even further, such that even if a woman has properties before she gets married, upon getting married, everything she owned before and during marriage automatically becomes that of the man. So what if a big issue comes in between? What if the divorce happens in between? What is the fate of that woman at that particular point in time? Yes, there are exceptions to a few of these things in between, but generally you realize that the issue, everything shoots the woman in the leg. All right, so it's important. The first thing you must take away from this is, for a woman listening to this, you must insist that you get married statutorily. You must insist, because one of the reasons you must insist is because if you don't get married statutorily, the court has no business intervening in your marriage. Because automatically, the moment you don't bring your marriage under statute, the court automatically does not have jurisdiction. So what we now see as the court being the last resort, the last hope of the, in quote, common man, you have shot yourself in the leg and you have shot yourself out of it. So you don't have any business having your marriage. So your marriage will only be subjected to the elders in the village, who you and I know already that they are going to be in favor of the man. So
Absolutely.
The first thing you must take away from this is that you must insist that your marriage is statutory. So if your marriage is not valid under the law at the end of the day, then you will end up shooting yourself in the leg, and the courts will not still have jurisdiction to come into your matter, as it were. All right. So it's important that you have that at the back of your mind. Some persons have the conception of because they get married in the church, they say, okay, their church is licensed and all. Please don't get stuck in between. That's a long conversation for another day. But take it that it's important that you have a certificate from the marriage registry at the end of the day. All right, so there are two other factors that we have to consider in this conversation. Number one, marriage outside the act, which is customary law marriage. And under this marriage, the court does not have jurisdiction, so there's almost no hope for the woman. And number two, marriage based on the marriage act. Church wedding is not marriage under the act, and you must ensure that you pass that mark. And number three, property owned before the marriage. Now, for property owned before the marriage, a man can have property before he gets married. A woman can have property before she gets married. So what happens to that property? All right. Number four, property bought during the marriage, which is generally referred to as matrimonial property. Number five, was there a child within and outside wedlock? This is a factor that comes into play when some issues arise. And number if the woman is from Whoa, that's even number. Okay. Yeah, you have to consider the religious and cultural background. Number 8, you have to consider the type of family you are from. Number 9, you have to, if the woman is from a very wealthy family, that's a very sensitive part of the whole thing. And number 10, after building with the man for several years, if you remarry, if you get married to somebody else, what is your fate? And then so I went to the present state of our laws. What is the present state of our laws as it relates to this matter? Does a woman have right inside the matrimonial home of her husband to own property for herself? That is the question. All right, for now, our laws generally, they are uncertain and very vague. Uncertain and very vague. There is no specific law that has specifically determined how property ownership should be determined with respect to properties that are bought with before marriage and after marriage as it relates to the woman. In fact, for where there is certainty, as a matter of fact, is under customary law. And the certainty in that regard is that anything the woman owns before and during belongs to the man.
Oh, wow.
That is where there is certainty. For statutory marriages, there's also what we now refer to as the administration of estate law. The administration of estate law, which kind of came to maybe help or clarify the issues or the uncertainties, but eventually doesn't even help, because first of all, the law is not a general application. It doesn't have general application in all of Nigeria. Some states have different terms in this particular law. All right. So one of the things that dominates the law is the fact that when the man dies, the woman has 1/3 of the man's residual estate. 1/3. You divide the estate into 3, and she takes 1 part. But there are still a lot of complications as far as this particular law is concerned. All right. So what is the way forward? What is the way forward, and what is the solution that this conversation is bringing to the table? Number 1, make sure you marry under the act.
Marry under
Number 2, yes, make sure you marry under the act. That is, make sure your marriage is statutory. First of all, what that does for you is that it eliminates the certainty that customary law marriage already has.
Okay.
Of course, there's still an argument about that, but let's leave that. It eliminates the influence, the heavy influence and certainty that customary marriage already has. And number 2, solution, depending on you and your wife or you and your spouse, all property ownership should be owned jointly as joint tenants, which here your lawyer has to play a very critical role. The moment you bring in words of severance to this particular conversation, then you are going to spoil the intent of the solution I'm bringing here. So it's important, because there are types of ownership or ownership of property. When you are owning property with 1 or 2 persons, there are several types of it. But the one I'm talking about that would help married people here is joint tenancy. Now, there are features of this joint tenancy. One of the features is that it has the rule of survivorship. And what is the rule of survivorship? It simply means that if one person dies out of the 2 persons, whether the husband or the wife, automatically, the moment that one of them dies, the title in the other person will just flow to the other party.
Okay.
That's one of the implications of a joint tenancy. So if the wife dies first, no matter who the kind of family that the man came from, if the woman dies first, no matter the kind of family that she came from, automatically, because of the joint tenancy factor, the property will flow from Mr. A to Mr. B. Or from the husband to the wife, or from the wife to the husband, depending on who dies first. That is one of the factors or features of this particular joint tenancy. Number 2, you can't give it out based on will. A property that was gotten as a way of joint tenancy, you cannot give it out as a will. So even if there is an issue at the end of the day, both of them, whether the marriage dissolves or not, they are still parties. They are still because at that point they are not dealing as husband and wife, as it were. They are dealing as co-owners of a particular piece of property. So at that point, you cannot will your own to another person. You can also naturally not sell, but the moment you sell, you sever the whole thing and you take it away from joint tenancy to tenancy in common. This stuff are technical, but I will leave you to try to ignore the technicalities and take the message
Yeah.
I'm driving at. All right.
Yeah.
So the next thing that the feature of this particular joint tenancy is that it has 4 units. You have possession, interest, time, and title. Let me leave that. Then you have to transfer your interest in your lifetime. If you die, remember, if you die or any of the parties die in the contest, the property, the interest, everything you have as far as that party is concerned, flows to the other party. So you have to transfer your interest when you are alive, when you think you are ready. So for instance, a divorce happens. You can just decide to, okay, since we are now divorced, I'll simply just, or both of you are separated, you're no longer together, because there are so many marriages that they have been separated, but they never go to court. I remember there was this client that reached out to me from the US. Herself and her husband, they live together, but they don't live together. And what does not living together mean? It means that everything that they own a property in the US, and everything they own here back in Nigeria, they have issues. So the only reason they are staying together in the US is because both of them contributed money to buy that property together in the US. That's why they are living together. But they are not living together as husband and wife. She doesn't want to go to the extent of divorce because of the children. But they are separated. So there are so many marriages like that exist in Nigeria. So for that kind of marriage, okay, what even happened for that woman was that she inherited the property from her family.
Okay.
And in the course of trying to do documentation for that particular property, she didn't use her name. She used her husband's name. So she is saying that yes, it's her property. But really, is it her property anymore?
It's not.
So there are just some complications around it. So I advised her, we found a solution and all of that, and found a way to sort out the whole thing. But the most important thing you have at the back of your mind here is that if the property was owned as a joint tenant, the moment both of them are no longer separated, she can just look out for who wants to buy her interest, then sell it without the intervention of the man or without any issue coming from the man. The moment that happens, what happens is, okay, for instance, let me try to simplify it. So yourself and myself, we are joint tenants in this contest. Joint tenants. Now, the moment there's a separation, I, on my own end, can decide to sell my property to Mr. John without your intervention. We are joint tenants. I can sell to Mr. John without your intervention. The moment I sell to Mr. John, what happens is yourself and Mr. John now come into picture. I am out of the picture.
Okay.
That's one of the very, very important solutions that joint tenancy can bring your way. All right. So the moment you transfer, I go out of the picture. And note, once you transfer or severe interest, it automatically leads to tenancy in common, which has its own implications. But I must advise here, you need serious guidance to be able to do this properly. By guidance, I mean the involvement of a lawyer that understands all of this. All right. Number 3, when you make contributions as a woman to whatever yourself and your husband is doing as per project, building projects and all of that, keep evidence. Keep track of your evidence. There are cases that have happened in the past that the court asked questions like, the woman claims that she contributed heavily to the building project, she contributed to the buying of the land and all of that. And usually, sometimes, because our laws sometimes can be very, very legalistic, and they just ask questions like, do you have any evidence to prove that you contributed here? If there's proof, then the court will now look at the extent of your contribution and then divide it at the point of divorce. But if there is no proof, then you are stuck. All right. So some of the proofs that you can have is, maybe instead of sending your husband 2 million naira to contribute to the buying of the land, you can decide to, maybe it's for a building project, you can decide to go and buy the building project yourself and have your name on it as a receipt. You mustn't put your husband's name. It's not as a way of distrust, but you mustn't put your husband's name. You can just deliberately put your name as the person who bought it, and keep those documents in case anything happens. right? And in the alternative, you can decide to send the 2 million naira to your husband's account. And what you do in that context is use the description section properly. Under the description part, write contribution for the purchase of land in Ikoyi.
Yeah.
So that way, when issues come up, all you have to do is go to your bank and print the statement showing that this was it as at 1997, and you are good.
Absolutely.
All right. And number 4, this one is going to be very sensitive. It is preparing a prenuptial agreement. Prepare a prenuptial agreement. What is a prenuptial agreement? A prenuptial agreement is an agreement that you prepare. You and your wife sit down together. You and your spouse sit down together and say, okay, this is what we want. This is how we want things to happen when we get married. And when we get married, peradventure this happens. This is what we want to happen. So it's a contract between yourself and your wife. I said it's sensitive because in Africa, the moment you start bringing up such conversations, they will say, oh, you don't trust me.
Absolutely.
Oh, this. Oh, you want to, and all of that. So it's a very, very emotional issue, but it's what some couples outside of Africa, Nigeria do. They prepare a prenuptial agreement. Usually this is very popular where maybe the wife's family is extremely rich, and part of the conditions that they bring in for you marrying someone who is, in quote, led with respect, not of your class, is that there is a prenuptial agreement. Because some persons just consider the lesser party as a gold digger, and they want, so that in case the wife dies, you won't just take over everything based on you are the man, that kind of thing. All right, so a prenuptial agreement helps. You can also have a postnuptial agreement, and that postnuptial is simply that when I don't marry already, all right, as soon as I don't marry, you can still just sit together and put together what you want. It could also even help to the point of it helps up to the point of how you want custody of children to be determined. So we have 4 children. Do you want to take 2? Should I take 2? And you take 2, and all of that. You can also determine whether. All right. So part of the things it helps you to do. Okay, yes, I was trying to say that even when, for instance, part of the terms or the paragraphs that can be in the prenuptial agreement is that if one person cheats or one person commits adultery, like steps out of the purity and the sanctity of the marriage, that kind of thing, you automatically forfeit your interest. As a matter of fact, that one can even prevent some husbands or wives from misbehaving. Because when you do that and you are caught, you have a prenuptial agreement already that says that if I do this, if I go contrary to this, then I automatically disinherit or disproperty myself.
I think I love this one. I love this one. I think I like this.
So it's just that it is sensitive. It's very sensitive, and it can lead to issues. It can even start generating issues even before the marriage starts if the parties are not mature. If the parties are not mature, then importantly, you need to know your spouse, know who this person is. Can he or she handle this? Is he more emotional than logical or rational? And there are a few other factors that would help to ensure that this particular prenuptial agreement is not shut down or is not declared null and void or invalid, because first, it's a contract, right? And there are elements that makes a contract valid. So you'd have to have that at the back of your mind. Of course, that's the responsibility of your lawyer. Then another important thing that you would have to consider is it's important at that point that 2 lawyers represent the parties. One lawyer represents the man, another lawyer represents the woman. That way, it also helps to reduce the interface between the husband and the wife, or the soon-to-be husband and wife. That way, of course, the lawyers are expected to be professional and mature. It's not everything that the woman or the man says that he would go and say to his client at that point. So, for instance, the man says something like, "What is wrong with her? Is she mad? She doesn't trust me. She wants to take all the children and all of that." The lawyer cannot go and present it that way to the man or the woman,
Yeah.
he can professionally put it in a way that, so that way, imagine that both parties were in the room. That already is can even, okay, I'm not married again, that kind of thing. But because of with the use of lawyers representing each party, of course, the lawyers should also, in my opinion, from one law firm or one company or something, have a lawyer represent, because that way they can. The both lawyers have interest, because lawyers can even complicate things. If you have a lawyer that is stupid, your case is going to be stupid at the end of the day. All right, forgive me for that. Okay, so it's important that you a lot of factors to consider with the issue of prenuptial agreement. And number 5, make a will. Learn to make a will. Learn.